Hello there, this is Critical from Critical Media, just taking a look at the 2024 Deluxe Edition release of Nightwing Year 1 by Chuck Dixon, Scott Beatty, and Scott McDaniels pretty much all over the art on this book. And what we usually do at this channel is give you an idea of what to expect if you ever come across these books in the wild. So we go over the exterior, some bonus material, art and plot points, and then a brief review at the end. And if you do dig these kind of videos, maybe consider a like and subscribe. But yes, at least looking into this one. Of all the year ones, admittedly, I'll get this out of the way. Batgirl Year 1 is still the top dog in this respect. But I've always been intrigued by this one. Yes, I've read it before, of course. I rarely do blind buys, but this one was always the one where I wouldn't want Robin Year 1, but I kind of always wanted this one. And yeah, I managed to at least snag it for a good price. And that would be another thing that I bring up before we get into this. Maybe just a little brief review. If you can get this book for lower than retail, pick it up. Otherwise, I would probably suggest maybe just giving it a legit, survey when you're at the bookstore. But anywho, at least walking around the exterior here, we have at least a new artwork here from Scott McDaniel for the cover. Now, I use the word new kind of loosely because it is your typical, very cliche composite. But, at least he did add a little bit of flair to it. I will admit the direct market variant is better. It's the Dan Mora one. But either way, this one is a little bit more fitting, at least alongside the other year one releases. But yes, at least in terms of the spine, though, it does have the lettering very similar to the Batgirl Year 1 and the Robin Year 1. Although I would even say it's very similar to even the Last Crusade Dark Knight book. Very intriguing there. And probably my favorite little cover from the series. It's only about 6 issues, right? But it is one of the favorite aspects here. But your typical fare with the remainder of at least, just the synopsis of the rear. But in terms of underneath the dust jacket, it is a gloss spine design. And I do appreciate the graphic design to the lettering, at least the bordering and titling. And if you are going to use a front-facing character profile, at least they made it off-center to at least give it a little bit of a unique aesthetic. So definitely appreciate that much. And yes, it does have similar lettering over here. It is a pretty short book, though. It is about 140 pages at best. But yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at with the whole pricing thing at the beginning of the video. In terms of bonus material, I guess being a deluxe edition, yeah, they did kind of fill it up with your typical fare. But I do appreciate whenever there are interviews, and there are ones here. So yes, probably my favorite cover right off the bat. The new one for this release. Yeah, your typical character profile there. And yeah, the very same variant cover that I was talking about earlier by Dan Mora. I like how it's basically Dick Grayson throughout, of course, all of his different costume changes. Definitely appreciate that. I definitely love the little nod to the little, very short period, the Black Mirror era of Dick Grayson Batman. And I do dig the New 52 version. I don't know, maybe just because the color red was just a little bit different. But yeah, you're kind of getting your, more so not just your interviews, but even the explanations behind things. Definitely appreciate that. The plotting of course, each issue. So yeah, going through a little bit of the scripts and layouts. Yeah, your typical fare with deluxes, even down to the paneling. So definitely appreciate that. And that's one thing also about this book is that they kind of include a little bit of bonus material as you go throughout the art and plot points. So yeah, even just jumping into the first issue, you kind of see what I mean, where it even just describes the color splash, the first page. Kind of at least, I guess, what's the word? The agendas, so to speak, of it all. But yeah, it really does start off, and I will say, unlike Batgirl Year 1, where it really, what's the word? It enhanced what was already the canon reasons behind everything. I will say that this book really does stay very close to the vest when it comes to the source material. So yeah, admittedly, Chuck Dixon and Scott Beatty, they didn't really try to be too dynamic with their storytelling. They really just played it very safe, stuck very close to the origin, or at least the rationale between Batman and Dick Grayson's falling out and whatnot. I do appreciate that little aspect where, yeah, For whatever reason, Alfred's bleeding, and at least they acknowledge it in this book. I appreciate that. It's actually a nice little nod to the issue because of some sort of coloring issue that happened in it. But anywho, that's a whole other thing. But yes, yeah, you get the big moment and the rationale behind why they had their falling out. Surprisingly, the book kind of makes it seem as though, and yes, the book is kind of told in a media res aspect, like it's almost like a letter to Bruce, like why did you do this kind of thing. But admittedly, it doesn't really paint Batman in the best light. He kind of admittedly kind of looks a little dumb when you read this book. But anywho, I guess that's maybe just because of the perspective of the character, right? But yeah, probably my favorite issue of this, and even favorite dynamic of this book, probably the most nuanced the writing gets, is just this whole aspect when, yes, Dick Grayson's trying to visit Clark Kent, and, you know, the whole hockey reference, for those of you who've read it, you may know what I'm referring to. But it's a pretty clever way of going about it, and it kind of makes them seem way more familiar with each other than you probably ever anticipated. And you, even reading this book, which is pretty much, with this page, is the crux of everything, the whole origin of course, Nightwing. You get this sense that even Superman, the way Chuck Dixon and Scott Beatty approached it, Superman does respect Dick Grayson significantly. He actually does look at him as a hero, and it's kind of hard for him to see him as anything else. So when you have, like, probably the superhero of superheroes saying that to you, how can you not be inspired, right? But yeah, I guess as the story progresses, you're getting pretty much a typical fare, almost a bit too much on the nose, kind of a plotting of events. But the one thing I will say about this book, and you kind of see it here, this book doesn't just serve as a transition of Dick Grayson from Robin to Nightwing, but it also serves as I guess, somewhat of the beginnings of Jason Todd. So I guess the book does get its extra wind, or extra, I guess, second wind in that respect. Definitely appreciate that. And speaking of appreciating things, just kind of seeing the juxtaposition between the way Jim Gordon would approach, like, you know, Batman versus the way Jim Gordon would approach Nightwing. I love this scene, and yes, this is a nice little nod to the Golden Age. I love that little, you know, flashing of the badge. Very unique. But yes, I just love the whole Batgirl and Nightwing little relationship. It's more than just a romantic thing. I love the way they work together, even professionally or professionally. Their banter is like so perfect for each other. They're both the optimists of the Bat family, you know. So it makes sense that their kind of attitudes and their animas are just naturally attracted to each other. Appreciated that. I always love how they play the will they, won't they. Not just in this narrative, just in general with the whole Nightwing and Batgirl thing. But anyways, as mentioned, it does kind of serve as the, you know, passing of the torch. So it does make sense that they have their story, Jason Todd and Dick Grayson. And by the end of it all, as mentioned, you do get an impression of this book that, yeah, Batman will seem to be more and more in the wrong as you read it. Like, he doesn't seem like the most Batman, you know, master of his situation kind of character you're getting. But like I said, it's probably due to the perspective of this story being told from Dick Grayson's eyes or perspective, right? But nonetheless, I will say this. By the end of the tale, does Scott McDaniel's art really wow me? No. It, as mentioned, just very much like how Scott Beatty and Chuck Dixon kind of approached the book, you're kind of seeing it here. The art is very face value as well. So you're not really getting too much dynamism. But then again, for those of you who are maybe familiar with Scott McDaniel, like, he was pretty much an artist where, if you need to get it done, you needed a story to release like right now, and you're on limited time, he could definitely do the job. And I guess I more so know him from, like, you know, the Ed Brubaker Batman run, which, by the way, I believe an omnibus will be coming out with a bit of that work in it too. So you might see Scott McDaniel a little bit later on this channel. But yeah, I don't disqualify this guy at all. After all, he's way better than I will ever be as an artist. And you could tell, like, his artwork is serviceable. If anything, I find the panel design is probably the more dynamic aspect of his art. But you know what? I don't mean to, you know, drag on the artist or whatnot. As mentioned, he's way better than I'll ever be. And as you can see, you do get hints of very clever design. I just maybe need to be more exposed to Scott McDaniel's work to truly appreciate it all. I mean, this image does kind of remind me of Eduardo Risso, so Yeah, I'm sure there's hope for him. But anywho, as we reach the end of this video, this is just simply my 2 cents. If you can get this book below retail, definitely consider a pickup. If you're wondering about the year ones, or at least the extended Bat Family year ones, still look for the Batgirl one. It's still the best of the bunch. That's just my opinion. And in that light, you know what? I'll kind of end the video in a similar vein. I wouldn't mind seeing your opinions down below in the comments, as always. And hopefully, I'll see you guys in the next video. Y'all folks take care.